Well, this is rather exciting. I'm about to be the first journalist in the world to sea trial the Axopar 45. Now, it's a big press launch, there's lots of press queuing up behind me, so I'm not going to get a huge amount of time, but I'm going to take you for the whole thing. The driving experience, of course, a full tour, and try and show you as much detail as I can aboard this, the new flagship of the Axopar range. There were 5 different body styles you can have with this boat. This is the cross cabin, it's fully enclosed, and then like the smaller models there's lots of different variations of what you can have in the aft cockpit. We'll go through those when we do the tour. Every boat's got the same engine option, triple 300 horsepower Mercury Verado V8s, and the starting price for this cross cabin model is €495,000 excluding VAT. Let's start by having a look around, shall we? So a couple of things to point out about this particular boat. First of all, it's a mule, it's a prototype. Axopar are going to run it all summer, and they're going to be chopping and changing what is on this aft deck, hence why it's completely clear. There's no railings, there's no bench, there's not really anything to hold on to, but that is not a reflection of what the production boat's going to look like, hence why it looks so sparse. Now, as I mentioned, triple V8 300s, that's the only option they're gonna offer. You can have twins if you really want it, but really the boat was designed to have these triples for the cost of the engines, running costs, power to weight ratio. Axopar was determined that this was the best way to run this boat. Access to these engines is great, obviously, and here you can see you have your boarding ladder. This is the way on and off the boat if you've been for a swim. Now, this storage here is familiar to every Axopar in the range, really. They've all got these really useful deep storage bins where you can put your fenders, and you can see this is where the shower is as well. Shower head pops out of there, but yeah, it goes a long way back, so you can fit fenders, lines, life jackets, lots of kit back here out the way in a really convenient position. And talking of storage, we lift up this central hatch. Now again, this prototype, they've left everything open. There will be lids on all of these on the production version, but you can see some of the storage underneath here. That's a cushion for one of the benches that we'll look at later on. See the battery banks on either side, all really good access, but this will all be covered when you get to the production version. And of course, there are lots of options for what you can have back here in the cockpit. I'll just close that down. So like with the other models, you can have a wet bar back here. You can have the multi-storage option, which is where you have storage for a water sports kit. Obviously, you can have the aft cabin, that gives you a raised sun pad, and another double cabin as well as the one forward. And you can also have an aft bench, or you can leave it completely open. If that's what you prefer, if fishing's your thing, then you can leave it completely open as this boat is. But as with the other models in the range, huge amount of flexibility when it comes to the layout back here. Full walk around decks. But one of the key points about the 45 is that you have these fold down benches as standard. They've got storage in the top, you have them on both sides. When you're out at sea, you undo these latches, push them down, but they're not at water level, they're raised up out the water. Now, their opinion is we'll put them in midships, we'll have a bench, there's a bit of storage set into them as well, so you can see this opens up to create some storage inside these themselves. And then the other clever thing about the design of this cabin is you have doors opening both ways. So you can see that door there is slid back, but then the aft section also slides forward. So if I turn round on this side, the aft section has been moved forward. So then you can sit back here inside the wheelhouse, slide the doors forward, balconies down, and you have a really nice sort of inside-outside socialising area. So it's a different interpretation on the balconies, but works especially well on this cabin boat because they had to think about how the balconies would work when you have a fully enclosed wheelhouse, and it's quite a neat solution. These are big heavy doors, you know, they slide fore and aft, as I said, they lock in a couple of places, but they really do open up this cabin very nicely, and it's remarkable how much bigger this cabin feels than the 37. You can move around it really easily. Obviously there are lots of glass, twin sunroofs, they come as standard, so they're both open back. So it's really easy in a matter of seconds to open this boat up and ventilate it, despite the fact it's fully enclosed. And actually we've got a really nice view of the roof racks as well. So you can see you've got roof racks, we've got our stand-up paddleboard, got our canoe. You know, it does make it feel like a bit more of an adventure boat. Now this is an interesting solution as well. The table and the wet bar are on runners. So you have fridges on both sides, then you have your sink and your grill, and the table obviously, but you can see there's runners down there, and the whole thing slides along these runners. In fact, the runners are going to slide further back eventually so that the table can get close to that bench for when people are dining. But it means that you have quite a lot of flexibility, so you can push this back towards the helm seats if you're using it as a dining area, or you can have it like this when you're moving along so that people can stand on this leaning post and look forward along with these 3 forward-facing helm chairs. It's quite a heavy mechanism at the moment. As I said, it's hull number 1. I imagine that will get easier when they get to production. The other thing is, at the moment, these runners are proud of the carpet and they are very sharp edges, so catching your toe on there would be quite painful. Again, something I imagine they will eradicate for the full production boats. Now, if you have the aft cabin, if I just move these scatter cushions out of the way, this is how you access the aft cabin. So this lifts up, pins in place. Now this is just storage on this boat, but on the aft cabin version there's a companionway down into the double berth like you get on the 28 and 37. Very similar sort of setup. And of course you can have different materials, different colours down here. If you don't like this upholstery, wood, that can all change. Table folds out, and the table also spins, so you can put it at an angle, you can put it facing 90 degrees the other way, so that spins round, as well as sliding fore and aft, as I've already mentioned. But what you notice about this cabin is on the 37 you do find yourself sort of having to slide past stuff. It feels tight, feels a bit claustrophobic. Not so on this one. The spaces are really good. It feels plenty spacious enough and very light and airy. Now, triple helm seats, these will be familiar to anybody who's been on an Axopar. Very similar design. They've got lift bolsters, they slide fore and aft, they spin round, and then you have the typical super clean Axopar helm station. Everything is digitally integrated across your 3 screens. Really nice feeling, soft touch, dark material, so there's no glare in here. Multifunction steering wheel, and then a nice run of buttons, proper buttons, if using lighting, wipers, things like that, the bilges, stuff that you don't want to be swiping through menus to have to use. And cup holders over on this side. And maybe from here you can just get a bit of a sense of the scale of this cabin. You're a long way from the engines here. You can't actually see them from the helm station unless you really stand on your tiptoes. You can just about see where they are, so Axopar are thinking of a solution to make them more visible. But it does mean they're very quiet because they're a long way away. Something I would like to see, they've got a step here. You can see, you can step out from the helm, but it would be nice to have a boarding gate here. It would just really add to the functionality as a single-handed helmsman if you could get out onto the side deck and then straight out onto the deck, onto the pontoon I should say, without having to jump over the side deck. If there was a gate there, it would be pretty much perfect. But even so, when you're on your own, it's an easy enough boat to handle. So, that's the main deck. Let's have a little look down in the forward cabin. And again, this is a space where you really feel the difference over the 37. It's just much more spacious for obvious reasons. Headroom is good. I'm 6'1", and yeah, I've got plenty of room above my head. It narrows down a little bit as you get towards the end, so I'm just having to stoop a little bit here. But here it's good, and the key thing is you've got a decent bathroom. Again, prototype, all of this will be covered up on the final versions of the boat. But on the 37, this was really quite compromised, feels a bit sort of sandwiched in there. This is a proper separate cubicle with full standing headroom. It's got a proper shower as well. Nice black finish on these, looks quite smart. Takmar toilets. It's just a much more usable space than on the 37, and really does open up the idea of weekending, or maybe even a bit longer. Bit of storage in here. There's more storage running behind the settee here. A little bit more down here. There is a sink on deck, but there's also a sink down here. If you need to wash your hands or wash up a bit down here, then you have got a sink down here. And you have the gull-wing doors, exactly the same as on the 37. Everything's a bit more substantial though. Beefed up rams, beefed up latches. Just feels a bit more secure. And they do work well. They do give you good access and do open up this area really nicely. And this is quite clever. This is in sofa mode, but if you want to sleep on this double berth, you simply pull this whole thing forward, and just like that, there's your bed. Decent size as well. Narrows quite a lot towards the bow, but at this end it's actually pretty comfortable. If we finish up moving forward, something they've added on this model is you've actually got sun cushions on the gull-wing doors. So when these are down, you have an extended sun pad as well as this nice bench here with the built-in cup holders. That works really well. The other thing they've added to this model, this is a standard feature. Again, just look at this. This is definitely beefier than what we'd have seen before in Axopar. They have worked hard to make this stuff feel a bit more substantial. The last party trick is this, the auto anchor. So it's an ultra anchor, lovely bit of kit that, and it actually flips over and out at the touch of a button down here. So you don't have to have it out all the time. If you're going on a long journey, you can stow it away, make sure the anchor's not going to rattle around or potentially drop down. But of course you can travel along with it out if you want to, but again, just an added bit of functionality that's new to the 45 that we haven't seen before on Axopar. One of Axopar's key things is to try and make these boats feel comfortable if you're relatively new to boating. And this is the biggest boat they've built. It's got a long bow, especially this wheelhouse one, a bit of windage. So when it comes to slower speed work, coming into the marina like we are now, there are a few tools there to help you out, considering you've got 3 outboards out the back there. A bow thruster is standard on this boat, and I think that's very sensible, because even if you have got the optional joystick, there are going to be times where you just want to nudge the bow and you don't want to have to go to the joystick to do that, especially if you're mooring stern to in the Mediterranean. Just having that fine control over the bow is a really nice thing. But of course, it's an optional extra, but it's a very nice optional extra, is the skyhook system that Mercury have been producing for a long time now. But it means when you knock the throttles into neutral, you're straight onto the joystick, it's active immediately, and then you have just twist. You can just hit the outboards centering, and then the computer just works out what to do with the 3 motors in order to make the boat go in the direction that you want it to. You can push to go forward, you can pull to go back, and then if you push the joystick sideways, the whole thing moves sideways. So it just makes it very, very easy to control. Yes, there's 3 engines out there, it's quite a big boat, but all you boil it down to is this joystick. And of course another key feature is the skyhook system, which if you hit that button, there's a little brake, and then the computer, just using GPS, keeps you exactly where you've pressed that button. So if you're on your own and you're about to enter the marina and you want to hang the fenders, or you're waiting for a fuel pontoon or a bridge, you just hit that, you know the boat's not going to move an inch. All very easy, all very accessible. That's a whistle-stop tour of the new 45 then, and if previous tests of Axopar are going to go by, this is going to be quite something out in the water. Let's find out if it is. Right, this really is first impressions then. So this has got triple 300 horsepower Mercury V8s, the only engine option that they're really pushing. And what you notice immediately is how refined and quiet it is. That is 30 knots already, and there's a slight chop. It's not particularly challenging today, but what's really noticeable is that the engine's just, you can barely register that they're even there, and 30 knots, even in this slight chop, feels like walking pace. And at this pace, you're probably going to have to cover over 230 nautical miles. And even at 40 knots, which you can comfortably cruise at in this thing, you're going to have over 200 miles of range. So we'll go there now. And even though you can't really hear the engine on this cabin version, you certainly know they're there when you put the throttle down. There is such punch on tap from those triple petrol V8s. It's absolutely lovely, and like that now we're just cruising along at 40 knots, and this is what this boat is so good at. The 37 is very good at it, but that elongated hull we've got here on the 45 just means it absolutely monsters this sort of sea. You can travel so comfortably at really quite indecent speeds for conditions. And the other thing is, which is maybe more of a surprise for the larger boat, is just how nice it is when it comes to handling. It actually feels to me grippier than the 37. You can carry more speed into turns. You don't lose any pace, there's no cavitation. It just really does turn really nicely. It's so glued to the water. Driving position is great, and I really like the fact that you can lean. This is a really nice position for me, especially if it's a little bit choppier. It feels more natural to stand up. But of course this bolster, so you can sit, and it's adjustable. If you want to sit back and relax, you can. The steering wheel is set really nice and high, close to the throttles, and you have some major controls under your thumbs on this. The rest of the dash is all digital. You've got 3 SIM-RAM screens which are endlessly configurable. The smaller one lower down, but you've also got a proper run of switches as well, so you're not having to dive into digital menus if you want to do simple things like turn on the wipers or something like that. Top speed today, we've got 28% fuel, 75% water, 3 people on board, and we managed 43.5 knots. I mean, this is hull number 1, it's still classed as a prototype, but out of the box performance of over 40 knots, looking this big, really very impressive. The thing that stands out most really is just how it shrinks around you when it comes to the handling. And there's 5 different versions in terms of the actual design layout: suntop, crosstop, spider. This is the full cabin, and if you want